Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. In today's lecture, we will be creating a virtual environment for our FastAPI application on a Mac OS machine. So the first thing you need to do is open up your terminal. Once you have your terminal open, you should see something similar to my screen. Now the first thing you may see in my terminal is that I have zish running. So you can see right here that it says -zsh. Zish is default on a terminal and we need to change zish to bash. We can do that by typing chsh-s/bin/bash. After that, we're going to have to type in our password for our machine. And now that it was changed, but the only way for us to see bash actually show up on the terminal is to close our terminal and to reopen the terminal. So I'm going to close the terminal and reopen it. And now we can see that we have bash running instead of zish. It's even telling us the same instructions on how to switch back to zish from bash. Let's now jump to our desktop where we will be making the directory and project folder for this course. Once we are on the desktop, let's now create a new folder called FastAPI. We can make a new directory by typing mkdir FastAPI. And now I'm going to cd into our FastAPI folder we just created. And once we are inside this folder, I'm going to start to create our virtual environment. The first thing we need to do is use pip3list. Pip3list will show us everything downloaded onto our machine with Python. So let's go ahead and see what we currently have installed. After typing in pip3list, we can now see the VirtualENV installed on my machine at 20.7.2 version. If you do not have VirtualENV already installed on your machine, you can install it by typing pip3 install VirtualENV. This will install VirtualENV onto your personal machine. We can see that I have a whole bunch of requirements already satisfied, and that's because I already have VirtualENV installed on my machine. If you don't have VirtualENV installed on your machine, you're going to see a whole bunch of downloads and dependencies getting installed onto your machine so that you can successfully use VirtualENV. Now from here, we're going to want to now create our virtual environment. We can do that by typing in Python 3 -mvenv FastAPI environment. After typing this in, we will successfully have created a virtual environment for our FastAPI directory and class. Now to activate our environment, we can say .FastAPI environment /bin/activate. We can see that it was a successful activation of our virtual environment because FastAPI env is now in parentheses in front of our entire terminal line. We can deactivate the virtual environment by getting into our bin folder and then saying $source deactivate. We can see that we successfully deactivated the virtual environment as the FastAPI environment in parentheses is no longer in the front of the terminal line. So let's go back to our FastAPI directory that we created on our desktop, which is going to be the main directory for the entire course. And from here, I'm going to do the same .FastAPI environment bin activate to start up the activation of a virtual environment. You can click up on the directional pad on your keyboard to see terminal commands that you have already used. I'm going to click enter and then reactivate the virtual environment. Now that we're in our virtual environment and we are in our parent directory, which is FastAPI, we now need to install FastAPI. Now there's two different ways of installing the dependencies for FastAPI. You can do the easy way, which we will be doing, which is pip3 install FastAPI, and then within square brackets we say all, but that really installs two main dependencies that we can also install separately if needed. The first being FastAPI. FastAPI is the main dependency for being able to use FastAPI. The other dependency is Unicorn, which we will be installing, but it's already included when we do the all brackets at the end of the pip3 install FastAPI. From what we can see that I'm getting a whole bunch of installations and dependencies getting installed in our virtual environment. These are all dependencies that we need for our FastAPI. And again, we created this virtual environment to keep all of these FastAPI dependencies completely separate from any other Python project we may be creating on our machine. So when we are in this virtual environment, we have FastAPI, but if we get out or deactivate this virtual environment, FastAPI is no longer accessible unless you reinstall it. At the end, we can see that my pip version is outdated by a little bit. That's totally fine as of right now. So now I'm going to close the terminal, and I'm going to open up our FastAPI directory that we created on our desktop. Inside FastAPI, we can see that we see our FastAPI environment, but I'm not going to be opening up that. I'm going to be opening up the parent directory of FastAPI. From here, we can see that we have the FastAPI environment with the bin, include, lib, and py.venv.cfg, but that's kind of irrelevant right now, as those are just folders for the virtual environment. So I'm going to close that up. We can open up our terminal, and we can see that FastAPI environment is still activated because it's getting carried over from our terminal. If we wanted to deactivate FastAPI env, we can jump into our bin folder and do the deactivate command. So now you can see that I deactivated the FastAPI environment. But for this course, we want this activated. So I'm going to reactivate it. And I just wanted to show that you can deactivate and activate it from the PyCharm terminal. Now from here, we can right click on this parent directory and say new Python file. And I'm going to name this file books. So books is going to be the first application that we really learn about what FastAPI does. So I'm going to make it books.py so we can create our first starting API. But then after that, in the future lectures, we'll delete this first starting API and start really diving into FastAPI. And I will close the terminal. And now within books.py, we now need to import FastAPI into the books.py file. So from FastAPI, import FastAPI. And then after this import, we're going to create a new variable called app, which is equal to FastAPI. And now under this app, we're going to create a new function. And now I'm going to call this function first API, but we need to make sure this function is also an asynchronous call. So we can do that by typing in async def first API. And from here, I'm going to return a dictionary. I'm going to have the key equal to message and the value to say, hello, Eric. And now we need to make this method an API. So we can do that quick and easily and efficiently with FastAPI by using the @app decorator and making the app.get equal to an empty string. Now we need to jump into our terminal and start this file up. We can do this by typing in unicorn books::app reload. Once you type in this command, we can see we'll watch for changes in these directories, unicorn running on http://127.0.0.1:8000, started reloader process, starting server process, waiting for application startup, and then finally application startup complete. So let's now open up this URL. And we can see that we get message hello Eric returned. So we get the dictionary RESTful API returned to our URL of 127.0.0.1:8000 with our dictionary of message hello Eric. Now this is super exciting. So we successfully created a RESTful API using FastAPI and already rendered it onto a page. Now in the next few videos, we'll remove this first API call and we'll start creating an application. But congratulations on creating your first FastAPI RESTful application programming interface. And I will see you in the next video.